Hello, everyone. Welcome into this SEC Morning Report here on Southeastern 14. I am Blayne Gilmer. Thank you for tuning in here to Southeastern 14. As you do, a lot of you guys each and every weekday morning, if you guys want daily SEC coverage, then this is the place to be. Guys, as you can see, I'm obviously not in my normal setup, doing a little traveling right here. So please excuse the hotel background here as we get along with this SEC coverage, but wanted to bring you guys a morning report. Nonetheless, we'll have Jake's takes tomorrow morning with Jake Crane of the Daily Wire. And guys, as always, if you love this content and you want to be a part of what we're doing here on Southeastern 14, you think people that you work with, your business, stuff like that would love it, then make sure to reach out to caroline.smith at southeastern14.com, and she'll be able to hook you up with how you can be an MVP for Southeastern 14. Also get you a 15% discount in the description there from CHOMPS. CHOMPS, a great protein snack, whether it is venison, beef, turkey. They got great flavors over there. My favorite is the jalapeno beef over there. So make sure that you check out CHOMPS as well in the description. But guys, without further ado, I want to get into some of these matchups inside of these games, some areas that I think each team should have a little bit of concern in these matchups, and where maybe one side could take advantage of the other. Let's start with Georgia and Kentucky. When we're looking at this matchup, I think obviously when it comes into it, Kentucky's going to want to run the football. We know that, okay? And I'm really not worried about Georgia's interior defensive line holding up, whether that's Nazir Stackhouse, whether that's Warren Brinson, whether it's Zion Logue. I think all those guys are going to hold up pretty well in the interior there. Really not too worried about Michael Williams, Chaz Chambliss, those guys on the edge, where I think Georgia is going to have to make plays, and where Florida repeatedly failed to make plays against this Kentucky running game is at the linebacker level, and also some of the safeties coming down, whether it was a star or a safety or whoever fitting the run. So who I'm looking at in this game, looking at Jamon Dumas-Johnson for Georgia. I'm looking for C.J. Allen, looking for Tyke Smith, Javon Bullard, all these guys that come up and end up forcing these runs at the second level. I know that Bullard is a safety and playing more free safety, but they still come up and they use them in ways where they stop the run at the second level. Smile Munden, all these guys. Smile Munden was the SEC Defensive Player of the Week last week. So I think you're going to have to continue to get great play out of them, because what Kentucky does a good job of, they do a good job of getting those double teams at the point of attack, trying to neutralize your defensive front, and then they're coming off on those linebackers and getting just enough of them where Ray Davis can get by. He doesn't need a big hole, guys. He doesn't need a whole lot of room, because he's a talented back, and he can also kind of BYOB at times. So it's going to be imperative that Jamon Dumas-Johnson, C.J. Allen, who got lost a few times in that Auburn game, didn't fit things, maybe the way he should have. Smile Munden, I thought, played a really good game, but he's going to have to play excellent again. And then Tyke Smith missed some tackles out on the edge, even though he's been fantastic for Georgia a lot of the year this year. But he had some missed tackles in that Auburn game. Of course, we know the edges. I think Georgia will align a little bit differently than they did in the Auburn game, but that is a matchup that I think Kentucky comes into this and says, hey, we can do our job on those guys up front, and Brinson, Logue, Nazir Stackhouse, then we feel pretty good about, hey, going up against these linebackers, Ray Davis, one-on-one in the hole, try to get another blocker in there, get another hat in there, whether it's pulling somebody around on gap scheme, or whether it's inserting somebody on zone scheme, or having just to get that movement up front with the duo scheme. I think that's what Kentucky's going to try to do. But obviously for Kentucky, Devin Leary is going to have to play better than he played in the Florida game to have a chance against Georgia. You're going to have to be more productive in the passing game. And I think that's going to be the matchup of, okay, people know that they're not going to really go and attack Kamari Lassiter. So where is the matchup going to come for them? Are they going to try to go after one of Georgia's safeties in the middle? Good luck with that. Javon Bullard has been, great for Georgia. Now he's working his way back for injury. He's been a 2-time MVP of college football, 3-time, I think, college football playoff game MVP for Georgia on the defensive side of the ball. So they're going to have to try to find matchups. I think you're still looking at that other corner across from Kamari Laster, whether it's Dalen Everett, whether it's Julian Humphrey. So we'll see who they end up trying to attack and go on those matchups with Dane Key, with Barian Brown, things like that. But the matchup that I think Kentucky's going to really try to hone in on, those linebackers. How does Georgia's linebackers play against this Kentucky run game, and how do they fit? I think and also some members of that safety unit, whether it's the star safeties coming down. So I think that's one to watch, and one Kentucky probably feels like they can have a little success with, based off of not exactly the same with no threat of quarterback run, but based off some of the stuff they saw in that Auburn film. Now for Georgia, if you're looking for a matchup that I think Georgia is kind of licking their chops to go attack on Saturday, I think it would have to be the safeties for Kentucky, matched up against not only Brock Bowers and Oscar Delp, but also Dominic Lovett on the inside in the slot, because now Ladd McConkey comes back, and that's going to be a big time matchup between Andrew Phillips, Maxwell Hairston on the outside, between Marcus Rosemy-Jackson on the outside, Rod Thomas on the outside, Ladd McConkey on the outside. Those kind of guys occupying a great matchup with those corners. I think that's going to kind of be, nip and tuck back and forth. But where Georgia could really, really have some success, I think, is operating in the middle there. Of course, we know what Brock Bowers is, maybe the greatest college tight end of all time, and he's going to be going up against Alex Afari, Jordan Lovett, and also Zion Childress right there. And I'm not so sure that they're going to be able to just totally neutralize what Georgia can do in the middle of the field, especially off of play action with Bowers, Delp, and Lovett. When you're talking about this, Florida had opportunities. Graham Mertz had opportunities. You go look at the first 3 drives of that game. There were wide open opportunities for Graham Mertz to make plays, and he simply didn't hit them. We know early in games, Carson Beck has missed a couple, but man, he was dealing in the second half of not only the South Carolina game, of also the Auburn game. So can he hit some of those opportunities early? Because Kentucky's aggressive. They play some man coverage. There's going to be some opportunities for you to hit things there, especially over the middle. Like I said, with Delp and with Bowers, with Lovett, against those safeties, and against those players in the middle there, even if it's Trevin Wallace or somebody matched up on them, I think Georgia feels confident about their guys in the middle, whether it's a slot or tight ends matched up against second and third level defenders in the middle of the field versus Kentucky. So I think that's something that you need to look out for in that game. Now let's move on to LSU and Missouri. Over under of 65. That, man, there's going to be some points scored in this game. I think when you're talking about LSU, we have to start. Everybody's talked about, hey, their secondary, how bad it is, and rightfully so. Okay, especially with Luther Burden on the other side, that is a big problem and something you got to get corrected. You got to have Zy Alexander play better in coverage. You got to have Ashton Stamps play better in coverage. Terrence Wells, Denver Harris, all that kind of stuff. We know that. Okay, that's kind of low hanging fruit at this point. They have to play better the secondary. The real matchup that I'm looking to see is, and Missouri will probably try to test early. LSU had to bring in 82-year-old consultant who's now going to be a defensive analyst for the rest of the year, Pete Jenkins, who's been at LSU before. He's a defensive line guru, all this kind of stuff. Can he get Mason Smith, Mekhi Wingo, Savion Jones playing at the level that they should be playing at? Also, the linebacker play would help a little bit because Omar Spates didn't play very well. Greg Penn didn't play very well against Ole Miss in the run game. If Missouri is able to run the football at home, shorten this game a little bit, limit the number of possessions that Jaden Daniels has the football, because the best defense for Missouri is going to be to keep Jaden Daniels and that prolific passing game with Malik Neighbors, with Brian Thomas off of the field. And how do you do that? You run the football with Cody Schrader, with Nathaniel Pete. And by the way, guys, when you combine Schrader and Pete's production, it's top of the SEC in terms of 1-2 running back punch in the SEC. Cody Schrader is second overall behind Ray Davis in rushing yards and is averaging over 5 yards per carry. If they can be efficient running the football and they can attack what is, they just gave up 300 yards rushing to Quinshad Junkins did that LSU defensive front, not just Quinshad Junkins, but also Ulysses Bentley, also Jackson Dart involved in that total. I think that that's going to make for a recipe. Hey, early kick. It's 11 a.m. local time there in Missouri, Central time kick. And if that's an early wake up call, and if Missouri's able to run the football, that's going to make Luther Burden and those wide receivers, Theo Wees, out there on the outside that much more dynamic and help Brady Cook out. So I'm looking at that LSU interior defensive line and looking at Pete Jenkins, seeing if he can get him corrected. One thing I think Pete Jenkins will probably do right off the bat, get him playing a little closer to the football. They were a yard and a half off the football sometimes against Ole Miss, and that's something that's coached. So I don't know what was going on there, why they were so far off the football, but when you're getting it, when you're back there and you're letting that offensive line get a good step and a half towards you before you've even moved, especially in the SEC, that's not a good recipe for success. And guys, Ole Miss had not ran the ball well all year, so that's probably a indication of one reason why they ran the ball well against LSU. Okay, Alabama and Texas A&M. We know, hey, everybody's going to be talking about, all right, how does Jalen Milroe play in this game and things like that. But I think a lot of that is going to be dictated based off the offensive line matchup on the left side of his offensive line. Caden Proctor, Elijah Pritchett, they've kind of rotated back and forth. We'll see who ends up playing. Caden Proctor is listed as number 1 on the depth chart this week. We'll see if how much him and Elijah Pritchett maybe split time or what that looks like over there for Alabama this week on that left tackle position. But when you look at this Texas A&M defensive front, they are number 1 in havoc rate in the country. Okay, they absolutely disturb everything. Tackles for a loss. I mean, they had a total of 21 pressures on Arkansas when you take into account, sacks, hurries, all this kind of stuff against KJ Jefferson. And we know that Arkansas's offensive line has issues, but still, when you're looking at the left side of the defensive, it's the right side of the defensive line, the left side for Alabama, based on who's going to be going against that left tackle, whether it's Caden Proctor or Elijah Pritchett. You're looking at Shamar Turner. You're looking at Shamar Stewart. You're looking at, Taron York sometimes coming off there. Bryce Anderson coming off there at different times, depending on what pressures they bring. And we're going to see how they hold up. Not only in pass protection, but also how they're able to hold up in the run game as well. Texas A&M is just very, very disruptive. Okay, they create a lot of havoc back there. They force a lot of negative plays. And we're going to see how Tommy Rees goes about combating that. Do they bring a tight end over there to the left side a lot, whether it's Dupree or Amari Niblack, to, give a little chip before they go out into a route, or to, try to get a double team at the point of attack if they're running the ball to that left side, especially, or do they just try to read them with the quarterback read game, whether it's zone read, whether it's, an RPO based off of something where they release the tight end in the flat, things like that. There's lots of things they can try to do to neutralize it, but I think they're going to have to find some way to help Caden Proctor and Elijah Pritchett, because I think that side of the line is totally capable of wrecking games. Shamar Turner has played extremely well. We know what Walter Nolan can do in the middle, and also what Walter Nolan, sometimes they'll line him out on that left side of the defense, the right side of the offense. So Alabama, J.C. Latham over Walter Nolan, that will be a big time matchup at different times as well. But I think J.C. Latham can hold his own much better than the other side of Caden Proctor and Elijah Pritchett. So excited to see what happens on that side of the ball and kind of the matchup within the matchup there. Now, conversely, on the other side, I'm worried about the interior, of the Texas A&M offensive line, versus Alabama's defensive. Yes, the interior. And I know everybody's going to say, well, what about Dallas Turner and what about Chris Braswell for Alabama? Obviously, we know those are elite players for Alabama, and they can get pressure and they can do a lot of things. Okay. But when you're talking about the matchup with Texas A&M, Trey Zune and Chase Besantis have been playing really well at the tackles. They've been pass blocking at a very high level for Texas A&M. I'm not too concerned, maybe more so with Besantis than I am with Zune at the left tackle position. Yeah, I think Zune is very, very solid. Besantis is still a young player, so we'll see how he matches up, particularly on Braswell over there at times. But I think the big matchup that you're going to see in the middle, Bryce Foster, Mark Naboo, Layden Robinson having to go up against Alabama's Tim Smith, Tim Keenan, and also Justin Abogjibe, okay? Because when it comes down to those guys, they're kind of the unsung heroes of this Alabama defense. You don't hear a whole lot. You don't hear a whole lot about them, but they've done nothing but just kind of stonewall people this year and not been allowing much on the ground. That Alabama rush defense has been pretty salty, guys. They have a success rate of 33%, which is good for 20th in the country according to Stats of War. You go and look at the rushing yards per carry. I mean, they're right around 3.2. They're not allowing a whole lot of rushing against them. The only time they've allowed a average of over 4 yards per game was last week, but some of that was in garbage time towards the end for Mississippi State. Of course, Woody Marks is a good back, and they're able to run the football a little bit. But Alabama has been very, very good against the run, especially on the interior. So I think that's a big matchup because if Foster, if Naboo, if those guys in the middle, Robinson can't get any movement and can't help this running game, get Le'Veon Moss going a little bit, get Amari Daniels going a little bit, then what it's going to do is, even though we think those tackles are pretty good for Texas A&M, if you allow Alabama to get you in long yardage situations repeatedly and you're having to just continue to drop Max Johnson back and you don't have much of a threat of a run game in the middle there, then what you're going to have is then it plays right into the hands of Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell, whether they bring Jahad Campbell on a blitz from the interior, looping them around, whatever they want to do. Lots of different options that they have to be able to get after the passer if you're not able to run the football. So that's the matchup I'm looking at, kind of the game within the game. And I think where Alabama could have an advantage of this one is Tim Smith, Tim Keenan, Jaheim Otis, those guys in the middle going after Foster, Robinson, Naboo over there for Texas A&M. Now on the Texas A&M side, I think what they have to try to do is, we know how good Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry, particularly Kool-Aid, have been playing this year, and Arnold has been much better than he was the previous year at corners. I think what you're going to have to do is try to find ways, whether it's creating mismatches, moving Noah Thomas in, maybe moving him in and putting a 6'4", 6'5" wide receiver on a safety, even though Malachi Moore and Caleb Downs and Jalen Key and all those kind of guys are playing good over there for Alabama. I think you still have to find some matchups in the passing game. Texas A&M just has so many weapons, whether it's Jake Johnson in the middle on one of those guys, Max Johnson's brother. Of course, like I said, you could put a big receiver in there to try to get a height matchup, some 50-50 balls maybe down the middle, that kind of stuff with Noah Thomas, quickness with Evan Stewart, physicality, and being able to be just kind of a chain mover with Moose Muhammad. They've got lots of guys. Ja'Day Walker is quick and shifty in there. How do they keep up? Downs is an elite player. Malachi Moore is an elite player, but a lot of what they bring is physicality, fitting in the run game. There's still some ways you can attack them in terms of their pass coverage over there. So I think that's a matchup that you got to feel like, hey, that's an area where we can take advantage of things. If you're Bobby Petrino and stuff, they're probably going to neutralize you for the large part out there on the corners. We know how good, like I said, Kool-Aid and Terrion Arnold are playing, but those are matchups that I think you have to look at if you're Petrino and Fisher and Texas A&M versus Alabama in this game, somewhere where you're able to take advantage of things. And then, like I said, if Alabama doesn't allow you to run the football in the middle at all. If they can't get any kind of run game going with Le'Veon Moss, with Amari Daniels against that Alabama front, then it may be a moot point anyway. So we'll see how things shake out over there. But several matchups inside the matchups that I'm intrigued to see. Of course, we've got guys. I haven't talked a whole lot about the Vandy and Florida game because I just think Florida at home is going to run the football all over Vandy. So really no need to go into a matchup inside the matchup. The key thing is, can Vandy's front seven find a way to, stop Florida from just running it down their throats? That's what Florida's going to come in this game wanting to do, especially, getting that the way they got dominated a little physically up front, only had 69 yards rushing against Kentucky in that game at Kentucky last week. So, they're going to want to run the football with Etienne and with Montrell Johnson. And then over on the Arkansas and Ole Miss side, guys, it's just going to be tough for Arkansas to go into Oxford and be able to produce enough offensively right now. I know that Ole Miss is suspect on the defensive side of the ball, but LSU has a lot better offensive line play than does Arkansas. Right now, Arkansas is allowing a ton of pressures. They're not getting any kind of movement in the run game. Things are not easy for Rocket Sanders. I think that, can anybody on that Arkansas offensive line step up and be able to just have their best game of the year against a Ole Miss defensive front that's not tremendous, okay, but they got to be able to run the football a little bit because, you lost Luke Hayes as the tight end. It's going to be more difficult to find some matchups there in terms of receiving wise. So got to be able to run the football if you're Arkansas. If Ole Miss can limit that running game to any extent at all, I think they're safe, covering the spread there and getting that game going underway in their direction pretty well over there in Oxford. And you're looking at Ole Miss being, sitting in the driver's seat right there. I know they got the loss to Alabama, but depending on what happens over there in College Station, you could have Ole Miss sitting pretty at the halfway point of the season here in the SEC West. So, guys, there's a lot of exciting stuff going on. Next week, we're going to be getting into some more advanced stats type stuff. I'm getting into a little bit more of that, diving into, okay, now that we've got data, now that we're 6 games into a season for these teams are telling us who they are on 3rd and 4th down, what they're doing in terms of first down success, what's their identity like in terms of what plays and concepts and things like that they like to run at this point in the season. Really going to start digging into that next week as we have more data, and some of these teams are already hitting bye weeks and things like that. So we'll get into some of that. Also, each and every day here on the channel, there is a daily show with Chris Lee, with Gavin Schoenwald, with Blake Lovell. They take turns on that show. It is from 11 to 12 Central, 12 to 1 Eastern. Also, I have a show with Noshawn Marino and Tavares King, former SEC and NFL players, every Wednesday night live here on the channel. So hit that notifications button if you don't already, so when we go live every Wednesday night, 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central. And then, guys, also tomorrow we'll have Jake's Takes. Jake Crane from Crane & Company on the Daily Wire will be with us as well. So make sure that you tune in. We got a lot of great content. If you love SEC football and you love all SEC sports, in fact, Blake Lovell on Monday is going to be starting a basketball daily show here. So we have more daily content than anybody's putting out there, guys, and we would love for you to partner with us. You can hit up caroline.smith if you would love to advertise here. We have a tremendous audience that's growing by the day, and that's thanks to you guys for tuning in. So like while you're in here, subscribe, turn on notifications. Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate you picking this channel to be where you get your SEC content for all sports. We're going to have basketball. We're going to have football. We're going to have baseball, of course, in the spring as well, because baseball is huge here in the SEC, and we got some big teams coming in. Hey, there's a big matchup in the Big 12 that Greg Sankey's attended, the Red River rivalry over there. That's going to be a part of things when Texas and Oklahoma come to the SEC. And that, of course, brings good baseball with Texas, all that kind of stuff as well coming to the SEC. So it's an exciting time. Make sure you're part of it right here with us at Southeastern 14. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I'll catch you guys next time to talk more SEC football right here on Southeastern 14.